Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Sarah Massler-Donar. A recent Marquette Law School poll shows President Joe Biden has ground to make up if he hopes to win a second term in 2024. Right now, he trails the three Republican frontrunners. The poll of voters nationwide shows former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley with the biggest lead on Biden. She's up 55 to 45% among registered voters. Former President Donald Trump also had the edge on the current president. He's polling at 52% to Biden's 48%. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' lead was a little slimmer, coming in at 51% to Biden's 49%. The margin of error for the poll was 4.5%. Let's bring in ABC political director Rick Klein now. Good to have you back with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we know it's still early days here. Polling gives us that right now taste. But right now, President Joe Biden is in a tough spot. He's either neck and neck with or falling behind the leading Republican candidates, including former President Donald Trump. His predecessors have used early polls to shift strategy. Is this something Biden should focus on over the next year here?
Well, his team says they're not that concerned. They say the early polls are early polls, and they just are a snapshot in time, and the year is a long time. And they're right on that level. But I think there are some warning signs around the lack of enthusiasm that's felt toward him, around the blame for the economy, rightly or wrongly, the sense that things are not really in control, that things cost too much, the sense that he's too old to effectively lead for a second term. None of that seems to have made a difference in terms of convincing other major Democratic candidates to get into the race, but it has to weigh on Democrats, particularly as they look at a volatile election year where there's going to be multiple potentially third-party candidates running, in addition to, as you mentioned, former President Trump, who Biden beat, although narrowly, last time around.
Should the president be talking about the economy in a different way here?
Well, there's a lot of questions that are swirling in Washington and beyond about whether the president is right to try to lean in on this term Bidenomics. That has a negative connotation for a lot of people because they don't feel like the economy is working for them, despite low unemployment, despite the fact that inflation is now a lot more under control, despite the fact that the stock market is having a bit of an upswing recently. People don't feel it, and the leaning in and trying to own that term is something that actually seems to be backfiring. And I don't think you have a choice but to run on the economy as a president. People are going to blame you for the bad times and give you probably too much credit for the good times. But the particular labeling around Bidenomics, frankly, has just fallen flat.
Young voters who tend to vote Democratic feel very strongly about the Israel-Hamas war. You have a lot of young people who are less likely to support Israel. How politically risky is this for the president right now with the U.S. backing Israel so strongly militarily?
There's no question that there are divisions inside the Democratic Party that are playing out in the context of the Israel-Hamas war. They aren't new, but they are, I think, increasingly coming to the fore as a result of the fact that the president is as strong behind Israel as he's been. And I think the calls for the U.S. to moderate its position are only going to escalate over time. This is going to be a very long conflict, and the U.S. having Israel's back is going to be a complicating factor. I think right now that the view from the president's reelection team is that they're on the right side of this morally, practically, and politically. And yes, they have some Democrats who are pretty vocal about disagreeing with where the president is on this, but they feel like it's that brand of leadership that actually got him into office in the first place.
Abortion rights seem to win when they're on the ballot here, Rick. Voters in all 7 states that held a statewide vote have backed access, even in a red state like Ohio. Should Republicans be rethinking their strategy on abortion?
I think they have to be. I mean, I think right now, every time voters have the opportunity to weigh in directly or even indirectly in many cases, they've said they want access to abortion rights. And the example in recent weeks in Ohio, as well as Virginia and Kentucky, it does matter to voters in a way that seems to cut across pure partisan affiliations. And I think you've had some Republicans try to find new messaging on this. You've seen some of the presidential candidates trying to find more moderated messaging on this. No one has really landed on a winning formula yet. And I think that's going to be something that's going to be worked out inside the party over the next year. Or I think it's fair to assume that there's going to be some more surprises in November of 2024.
Right now, former President Donald Trump polling very strongly, the leading contender right now. Is he the nominee?
Well, overwhelmingly likely to be, but I think there's something different once the voting starts. We're about 2 months away from the start of the process in Iowa and then New Hampshire and all the states that follow. And until you see it happen, nothing is a foregone conclusion. Nothing's really happened yet. We're going to have another debate in a couple of weeks. I don't think anyone really expects that or the legal situation to measurably change the former president's standing in the party. He remains very popular, but that doesn't make him the nominee. Only voters do that, and the process truly has not begun.
Former President Donald Trump has proved to be very popular. Republicans, though, in statewide races, they do seem to struggle. What should they focus on going into the next year here?
I think right now Republicans are going to have to figure out their presidential nominee, and they're going to fall behind the mantra there. It's going to be hard for them to separate themselves. The situation in the Senate looks better because they have a much more favorable map, a lot of pickup opportunities there, including in West Virginia, where Democratic Senator Joe Manchin is not running for an additional term. But the House is going to be an absolute dogfight, and I think it's likely that we could easily see a split decision where the Democrats retake the House and lose control of the Senate, and then the White House, very much up for grabs.
To wrap things up here, Rick, for us, what's the biggest issue or factor for voters that we need to be watching over the next year?
Well, I think we talked about abortion rights. I think you talk about the economy and the perceptions thereof, and then I think the fate of democracy. Frankly, not to be too stark about it, but President Biden's view of this as a key campaign issue. Former President Trump continues to litigate and to try to claim falsely that he won the last election, and the ability to trust the system of governance is a real one. So the stakes are big. We're fond of saying it's the most important election of our lifetimes, and I feel confident a year out that we believe it this time.
ABC Political Director Rick Klein, thanks so much for being with us this morning.